The guests held their breath. My husband's accusation echoed, sharp as broken glass. He wanted me to crumble, to confess to a sin I didn't commit. But he forgot one thing in a smart home. The walls have eyes. His accusation was the gunshot, but I held the cannon. How did our charity launch become a public trial, and the video I was about to play would destroy not just him, but the young woman trembling in the corner? My name is Eliza. The applause felt like a wave, warm and enveloping. I had just finished laying out the vision for the Marcus and Eliza Future Fund, mapping a new path for philanthropy in Boston. Our grand salon was packed, donors worth billions, skeptical media faces. Our partners, all of them were smiling. I smiled back, adjusting the microphone, feeling the familiar rush of a successful presentation. I was 38 years old, a tech strategist, and this fund was my blueprint for the future. I stepped back, signaling to my husband. And now, the man who makes all of this possible, my husband, Marcus. Marcus, 40 and perpetually charismatic, walked onto the small stage, but the man who joined me was not the one I knew. His face was pale, tight with a strain I did not recognize. He did not look at me. He gripped the lectern. The room waited, expectant. He was supposed to launch the donation drive. "Thank you, Eliza," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying a tremor. The room quieted further. This was not part of the script. He looked up, not at the donors, but at the media cameras clustered by the bar. "I cannot," he began, his voice cracking with manufactured rage, "continue to live in this charade, in this lie." A gasp rippled through the salon. I felt my stomach clench. What was he doing? "Marcus," I whispered, stepping toward him. He held up a hand, silencing me. Then he held up his phone, the screen lit. "For months," he announced, his voice now booming, "I have had my suspicions. And tonight, I received proof. He was accusing me. Here, in front of everyone who mattered to our careers, to our lives. I will not be made a fool," he shouted. He turned the phone screen toward the crowd, as if they could see the tiny text. "My wife, Eliza, the brilliant strategist, has been unfaithful." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum, sucking the air and the warmth from the room. I could feel hundreds of eyes landing on me, pinning me to the stage. I saw David and Sarah, Marcus's business partners, near the front row. David's face was sheet white. Sarah looked like she was going to be sick. The media, previously bored and sipping champagne, surged forward. Camera lenses, black and unforgiving, pointed at my face. "This is a message," Marcus continued, relishing the drama. "From her colleague at Innovate Solutions, a man named Daniel." He read a message that had arrived just 30 minutes earlier. "Fantastic speech, Eliza. They're lucky to have you. See you at the 9 a.m. meeting." Marcus spat the words out. 9 a.m. What kind of meeting requires such private congratulations? What kind of colleague texts my wife at night? It was absurd. It was insane. But in the theater he had created, he was the wronged husband, and I was the villain. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a terrifying, rehearsed righteousness. "Confess, Eliza. Just tell the truth for once. Tell them what you've been doing." The shock was a physical blow, knocking the breath from my lungs for one long, agonizing second. I should have crumpled. I should have cried. He expected me to deny, to argue, to create a scene that would confirm his narrative. But in that frozen moment, the humiliation solidified. It turned from heat to ice. I saw him, not as my husband, but as a hostile element. I did not cry. I did not plead. I looked straight through him, meeting his gaze until he faltered. The whispers had started, a low hiss filling the void. "Can you believe it? At her own party." Ignoring Marcus's demand, I turned. My heels clicked decisively on the polished oak floor as I walked off the stage. "Eliza, where are you going?" Marcus yelled, his composure slipping. "You can't walk away." Confess, I was not walking away. I was walking toward the tech podium in the corner, where a laptop controlled the massive presentation screen hanging behind the stage. I reached the podium, picked up the live microphone, and pressed the on button. The small click was followed by a sharp feedback hum, silencing the crowd instantly. I looked across the room, my gaze sweeping over the shocked faces, landing finally on my husband, who stood frozen on the stage. My voice was clear, cold, and amplified. "Since Marcus has chosen to make this evening a screening of the truth," I said, "I think we should see the whole story." From the pocket of my evening gown, I pulled a small black USB flash drive. I turned to the laptop, inserted the drive, and clicked on the file. The screen behind Marcus, the one bearing the logo of our fund, flickered and went black. 12 hours. That's all it was. Just 12 hours ago. I was standing in this same house, but in a different world. The sun was streaming into our kitchen in Brookline, hitting the white marble island so brightly it almost hurt to look at. It was just after 7 in the morning, the day of the gala. The air smelled of dark roast coffee and a faint hint of the pastries Chloe was arranging on a tray. "It's perfect, honey. The closing statement is going to bring the house down." Marcus slid a ceramic mug across the counter to me. He was already dressed in a crisp button-down, the epitome of the dynamic entrepreneur. He smiled, the smile that disarmed investors and charmed journalists. "You're a genius, Eliza." "I'm just glad it's done," I said, wrapping my hands around the mug's warmth. I was running on about 5 hours of sleep, but the adrenaline was kicking in. From the corner of my eye, I watched Chloe, our 23-year-old nanny. She was meticulously cutting the crusts off toast for our son. Leo himself was still fast asleep upstairs, thankfully oblivious to the small army of caterers due to arrive. "Mrs. Hayes." Chloe's voice was always soft, almost reverent. "Will there be anything else you need before I check on Leo's breakfast?" "No, thank you, Chloe. This looks wonderful," I said. Marcus laughed, a light, easy sound. "She's amazing, isn't she? We really lucked out with her?" He walked over to the prep counter and leaned against it, startlingly close to her. "Chloe, you've saved us this week." He reached out and brushed a stray crumb from her apron, his fingers lingering on her hand for a fraction of a second too long. "Seriously, thank you." Chloe blushed, a deep crimson that crawled up her neck. "Oh, Mr. Hayes, it's nothing. I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. You and Mrs. Hayes have been so incredible to me." I watched the exchange over the rim of my mug. A tiny, cold knot formed in my gut. It was nothing. A friendly boss, a grateful employee. I told myself I was just stressed from the event. My mind was looking for problems that were not there. I was a strategist. I analyzed risk. But sometimes, I overanalyzed. I pushed the feeling down and turned my attention back to my laptop. Open on the island. I'm just double-checking the guest list against the server check-ins. The media team needs the final. "You're always working," Marcus said, but the warmth was gone, replaced by a familiar, faint edge of complaint. "It's my house, Marcus," I said, gesturing not just to the building, but to the network running through it. I designed this entire smart grid. The security, the lighting, the media, it's all running on my platform. I want to make sure it's flawless. Our house was my fortress, a modern marvel of glass and steel in Brookline, wired to my exact specifications. Every lock, every camera, every thermostat responded to my command. It was the one place on Earth where I had total control. A small notification popped up on my screen, a credit card alert. We had a joint account for household and foundation expenses. I frowned. "Marcus, what's this $5,000 charge from Cartier?" He didn't miss a beat. He laughed, walking over and kissing the top of my head. You almost caught me. It's a surprise for the silent auction tonight. A little something to boost the final numbers. Don't worry about it. Strategist. Let me handle one or two things. Okay. I looked up at him, searching his eyes. He was smiling, his gaze open and affectionate. But behind the performance, just for a millisecond, I saw it. A void. A brief, chilling emptiness where the man I married used to be. It was a flicker of a corrupted file, a glitch in the code. Then it was gone. He was just Marcus again. I forced a smile. All right, a surprise. I can handle that. He tapped my laptop screen. Good. Now, I've got to make calls. You just focus on being brilliant tonight. He walked out of the kitchen, his phone already to his ear. Chloe had finished the toast and was wiping down the already spotless counter. Her back to me. I dismissed the warning signs. I dismissed the touch, the blush, the lie about the auction, the emptiness in his eyes. I dismissed it all as gala day jitters. I had a speech to give. I had a fund to launch. I had a life to blow up. The file finished loading. The progress bar on the massive screen in front of me, in front of the whole of Boston society, turned a solid green. I looked up from the podium. My face was a cold, calm mask illuminated by the glow of the laptop. Marcus was still on stage, his face a confused mess of rage and panic. He had no idea what was coming. He thought he knew me. He thought this was his house. He was wrong. It was a spark, a single, tiny spark in a room full of gasoline. It happened just 30 minutes before he took the stage. The party was in full swing, the sound of clinking glasses and confident laughter filling our grand salon. I was standing near the French doors, deep in conversation with Jonathan Reed, a man whose personal donation could single-handedly fund the first 2 years of our operations. We were discussing data-driven philanthropy, and I was in my element. The night was a success. I could feel it. Eliza, your approach is revolutionary, Jonathan was saying. We need this kind of thinking. Thank you, Jonathan. We're just getting Eliza. The voice was sharp, cutting through the pleasant buzz. It was Marcus. He had come up beside me, his smile fixed and artificial. His eyes, however, were not smiling. They were cold. Marcus, I said, forcing a bright tone. Jonathan was just telling me, I need to borrow my wife for just 1 second. Jonathan. A small logistical fire. He didn't wait for an answer. He put his hand on my elbow, his grip far too tight, and physically pulled me away from the conversation. He dragged me a few feet into the adjoining hallway, a small alcove hidden from the main floor by a large marble column. The moment we were out of immediate view, he dropped my arm as if it were hot. What is wrong with you? He hissed, his voice low and venomous. What are you talking about? I was securing a major donation. You were ignoring me. He spat. You've been ignoring me all night, floating around, talking to your guests, accepting your congratulations. This is my name on the fund, too. I stared at him, baffled. This is our night. Marcus. I was networking. The same thing you're supposed to be doing. No, he said, jabbing a finger toward me. You were performing, making sure everyone knows you're the brains, just like always. Before I could respond, my phone, which I was holding in my hand, vibrated. I glanced down. It was a simple text notification. I saw the name Daniel, my colleague. Marcus saw it too. His eyes darted from my face to the illuminated screen. He read the preview text. Who is that? He demanded. It's Daniel from Innovate, I said, confused. He's just, let me see it. What? No, don't be ridiculous. Marcus, we're in the middle of our own party. I started to turn away, to go back to my guests, to smooth over his bizarre behavior. Let me see the phone, Eliza. No, I said, my voice firm. I'm not playing this game with you right now. He moved faster than I could have anticipated. He did not ask again. He lunged and snatched the phone from my hand. The back of his fingers grazed my palm, a violent, possessive scrape. I was so stunned by the physical act that I just stood there for a second. He unlocked it. He knew my passcode. Of course he knew my passcode. He read the full message. Fantastic speech, Eliza. They're lucky to have you. See you at the 9 a.m. meeting. A sane man would have read it and tossed the phone back. Marcus was not a sane man. Or rather, he was a man executing a very specific, insane plan. His face contorted into a mask of theatrical rage. 9 a.m., he roared. The volume was sudden, shocking. Heads from the main room turned toward our alcove. Marcus, stop it, I whispered, grabbing for the phone. Give that back. He held it above his head, turning his body so I couldn't reach it. This is what it is. This is what you're doing. You're disrespecting me in my own home, in front of all our friends, so you can plan your little meetings with your colleagues. The accusation was so loud, so public, that the music seemed to dim. I could see David and Sarah, his partners, looking over with open alarm. Marcus, you are making a scene, I said, my voice dropping, trying to will him to calm down. You are embarrassing yourself. Give me the phone. We are hosting a fundraiser. Do not ruin this. He stared at me. The feigned jealousy melted away, and in its place was a look of pure, unadulterated contempt. The emptiness I had seen in his eyes that morning was now a gaping chasm. He laughed, a short, ugly sound. Your evening, he sneered. You think this is your evening? He lowered his arm, pocketed my phone, and smoothed the front of his tuxedo jacket. I'll show you what disrespect looks like. He turned on his heel. He didn't just walk away. He strode, full of purpose, pushing past a startled waiter. He didn't go to the bar. He didn't go to the patio. He walked straight toward the stage, right toward the lectern and the live microphone. The salon was a tomb. The only sound was Marcus, still on stage, breathing heavily into the microphone. He was panting, an actor winded by his own dramatic monologue, soaking in the role of the victim, his face a mask of profound public pain. My eyes scanned the room, not in panic, but in a cold, rapid assessment. I saw David, his partner, his friend. David was on his feet, his hand half raised, desperately trying to catch Marcus's eye, making a sharp, cutting motion across his own throat, the universal sign for stop. Marcus ignored him, lost in his spotlight. My gaze continued, sweeping past the frozen, horrified faces of our guests, past the circling media, and landed on the staff entrance to the kitchen. Chloe. She was pressed against the doorframe, almost hidden. She should have been terrified, and she was. Her face was chalk white, her hands gripping a silver tray of empty champagne flutes so hard her knuckles were white, but it was her eyes. Through the fear, through the pallor, there was a spark, a bright, unmistakable glint of triumph. She was watching her co-conspirator, her lover, burn down the old world to make way for the new. She was watching me to see if I would break, and in that instant, everything clicked into place. The final piece of code compiled, and the program ran. This was not a spontaneous combustion of jealousy. This was not a husband heartbroken by a text message. This was a plan. The fight in the hallway was the trigger. His feigned rage was the script. This public execution was the climax. He wanted to destroy me. He needed to invalidate me, to paint me as the unfaithful, unstable wife before I could expose him as the thief and the cheat. He wanted the fund. He wanted the house. He wanted it all, and he had orchestrated this entire night to get it. The humiliation, which had been a hot, suffocating blanket, instantly froze. It turned brittle, cracked, and fell away, leaving behind an arctic, clarifying rage. The love I had for him, the patient, supportive, Accommodating love did not fade. It was not a dimmer switch. It was a filament that snapped. It was a clean break. The connection was severed. The last 5 years flashed through my mind, not as memories, but as a data log of my own stupidity. The $50,000 from my own savings to fund his seed round. The 2 promotions at Innovate I had passed on because Marcus needs me right now. The nights he was networking, the weekends he was closing a deal, the little inconsistencies I had flagged, isolated errors in the system that I had dutifully ignored in favor of the larger narrative that we were a team. All of it. A lie. A long, meticulously crafted deception. The man I had built a life with, the man I was building a legacy with, had just called me the cheater. He had handed me a loaded gun, pointed it at my head, and pulled the trigger, never once imagining that I was the one who had manufactured the bullets. The moment he said the word unfaithful, he ceased to be my husband. I was no longer a wife. I was a systems architect, and he was a catastrophic failure in my system. My body moved, all on its own, driven by this new, cold purpose. I took a step away from the column, then another. I was not walking to the exit. I was not going to run and hide. I was walking toward the tech podium. I moved through the crowd. People shifted, parting for me, their faces a mix of pity and morbid curiosity. They expected tears. They expected a denial. I had no intention of giving them either. I reached the podium, the control center for the entire night. My control center. My walk had been calm, measured. My mind was already 3 steps ahead, running diagnostics, plotting the exact sequence of commands necessary. Marcus, still basking in his performance, finally saw me. He saw me at the laptop, and a flicker of confusion crossed his face. "Eliza," he called out, his voice laced with false concern. Don't run away. We can talk about this." I didn't look at him. I looked at the screen. He thought this was his move. He thought he was rebooting our lives. He was just a bug. And I was about to run the administrator override. He was still on the stage, the powerful event lighting finding him, but the control was gone. The mask of the wronged husband was cracking, revealing the panicked, cornered man beneath. "Eliza, stop this!" he shouted, his voice shifting from righteous thunder to a desperate, sharp command. "Stop this farce, everyone is watching." I did not look at him. I looked at the microphone I had taken from the podium. I leaned in, and my voice, amplified, cut through the anxiety he had injected into the air. It was steady. It was cold. "They are. Marcus," I said. The words echoed in the sudden, profound quiet. "They are watching." My finger, steady and certain, hovered over the enter key on the laptop. I pressed it. On the massive 16-foot high-definition screen behind the stage, the beautifully designed logo of the Marcus and Eliza Future Fund vanished. It was replaced, instantly, by a stark, black void. A new wave of murmurs rippled through the room. This was not a denial. This was not a plea. This was something else entirely. After a beat, the black screen populated. It was not a presentation slide. It was not a chart. It was a cold utilitarian interface, blue and gray, with grids, timelines, and camera feeds. My interface. The words Smart Home Security Hub, Proprietary OS were illuminated in the top left corner. I glanced at the stage. Marcus had gone utterly still. He stared at the screen, all the blood draining from his face. He knew this interface. He lived in this house. He had just never understood what it was truly capable of or who controlled it. The whispering in the crowd intensified. People were confused. What is this? Is this part of it? My cursor, controlled by my steady hand on the trackpad, moved with lethal precision across the screen. It bypassed front door cam and kitchen feed. It moved to a folder labeled simply Archives. I clicked the folder. A drop-down menu appeared. My cursor landed on a single file. The white text highlighted against the gray. The label was simple, technical, devoid of emotion. Second floor hallway. The timestamp was next to it, 02:17 a.m., last night. I clicked play. The screen filled with a high-definition, crystal-clear image. It was the upstairs hallway of my own home, illuminated only by the low-level automated nightlights I had programmed. The angle was high, slightly to the left, capturing both the master bedroom door and, just down the hall, the door to the guest room, the room now occupied by Chloe. For a second, nothing. The hallway was still. The only thing moving was the digital timestamp in the corner, ticking forward, 2:17 a.m. A few guests looked confused. Marcus just stared, paralyzed. Then, the master bedroom door. Our door creaked open, not wide, just a sliver. Marcus's head appeared. A few people in the crowd gasped. He peeked left. He peeked right. He was checking the hallway, ensuring no one, not even a sleepwalking child, was present. Satisfied it was empty, he slipped out of the room. He was not in a tuxedo. He was not in pajamas. He was wearing nothing but a pair of dark gray boxer shorts. He was a man not going for a glass of water. The man on the screen, my husband. The victim moved with a practiced stealth. He tiptoed across the Persian runner, his bare feet making no sound on the wood. He didn't go toward the stairs. He went straight to the guest room door, Chloe's door. He stopped. He didn't knock, not a normal knock. He raised his hand and tapped, a light, specific, coded rhythm. Tap, 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 tap. A signal. He waited, barely breathing. The door opened from the inside, just wide enough for him to pass. He didn't hesitate. He looked one last time down the empty, monitored hallway, and then he slipped inside. His hand reached back, pulling the door shut behind him. It clicked, soft but final. The video continued to play. The hallway was empty again. Nothing moved but the timestamp. 2:19 a.m. I let the silent, incriminating image of the empty hallway play for 3 more seconds. Then, I hit the spacebar. The video froze. The closed guest room door, the empty hall, the time. The silence in the salon was absolute. It was a physical weight. It was so complete, so suffocating, that it was louder than any scream. It wasn't just quiet. It was the sound of over 200 people holding their breath at the exact same time. From the table closest to the podium, I could hear the distinct, delicate tink of ice melting and shifting in a highball glass. Marcus, on the stage, was a statue. Then he broke. He stumbled back a step, his hand flying to his throat as if he couldn't breathe. His face, which had been pale, turned a sickly, ashen gray. "That," he stammered, his voice no longer booming but a wet, desperate rasp. He pointed a trembling finger at the giant screen. "That is not real. It's fake. It's AI." He turned his desperate gaze to the crowd, to his partners, to anyone who would listen. "She did this, Eliza. She works in technology. She's a strategist. She faked this. She's trying to frame me." His words fell into the silence and died. No one was convinced. The man in the video was him. I kept my eyes locked on his. I didn't need to look at the screen. I knew every frame. "You're right. Marcus," I said, my voice still amplified, still cutting through his pathetic bluster. "I do work in technology." My hand moved on the trackpad. I closed the second-floor hallway file. I clicked on a new one. Playroom cam, nanny cam, view. The timestamp, 02:19 a.m. The scene changed. The perspective was different now, lower to the ground, from the camera nestled inside our son Leo's playroom. The playroom shared a wall with the guest room, and its door was just opposite Chloe's. This camera, installed to monitor our child, had a high-sensitivity microphone. The video was dark, but the night vision was perfect. It showed Chloe's door from the outside. But this time, we saw who opened it. Chloe herself, waiting. She was not in her nanny uniform. She was wearing a delicate silver silk nightgown, a nightgown I now recognized. It was the $5,000 surprise for the auction from Cartier. The crowd saw it. They saw her. And then, from the edge of the frame, Marcus entered. He didn't speak. She didn't speak. She just looked at him, and he, without a word, pushed the door shut, pulled her in, and kissed her. It was not a tender kiss. It was hungry, greedy, and desperate. It was the kiss of two co-conspirators who believed they were on the verge of victory. The high-sensitivity microphone picked up every sound, amplifying the wet, grasping noises and filling the dead-silent salon. They finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard. And then Marcus, my husband, whispered. His voice, meant for her ears alone, was captured with perfect digital clarity and broadcast to 200 of Boston's elite. "Tomorrow morning," he murmured, his lips close to her ear. "It will all be over. Just trust me." I pressed the space bar. The video stopped, freezing on the image of my husband and my nanny, wrapped in an embrace, their plot exposed. The collective gasp from the crowd was a physical thing, a sudden rush of wind. "Oh my God," Sarah, David's wife, said, her voice clear in the stunned silence. The sound that came next was a crash. Across the room, at the entrance to the kitchen, Chloe, the real-world Chloe, not the one on the screen, let go of the silver tray she was holding. Champagne flutes shattered on the marble floor, a violent, splintering sound. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Her face was a mask of pure, primal terror. She turned and ran, not to the kitchen. She bolted, pushing past a startled guest, and ran straight for the massive front door of the mansion, disappearing into the night. On the stage, Marcus watched her go, his mouth open in a silent, "Oh." He was alone. I saw David, his partner, take a step, then another. He wasn't walking to the stage to comfort his friend. He was advancing on his liability. His face was a dark, furious red, his jaw clenched. He wasn't looking at Marcus with sympathy. He was looking at him as a man who had just single-handedly destroyed their firm's reputation. The bomb had detonated. The shrapnel was flying. I stood straight, my hand still holding the microphone, my body cold and steady. I looked past the chaos, past the fleeing nanny, past the enraged partner, past the horrified guests. I looked straight at my husband, who was finally, at long last, looking only at me. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow leak, a buildup of toxic, odorless gas that I, a data analyst, had been systematically ignoring. It started 3 months ago, when we hired Chloe. She was perfect, almost offensively so. 23 years old, a recent graduate with a specialty in early childhood development. Her references were pristine. She was quiet, respectful, and seemed genuinely in awe of our home and our lives. "I'm just so grateful for the chance, Mrs. Hayes," she'd said, her eyes wide. Marcus was the one who championed her. "She's got a great, calm energy," he'd insisted. "Leo will thrive with her." The first anomaly wasn't Chloe. It was Marcus. About 2 weeks after she arrived, his travel schedule, usually packed, suddenly cleared. "I'm going to work from home more," he announced one dinner, a picture of the devoted, modern husband. "It's inefficient to be in the city office when I can do the same work from the study." It sounded logical, but the pattern that emerged wasn't. His work-from-home days were Tuesdays and Thursdays, my long days, the days I was physically at the Innovate Solutions headquarters from 8 a.m. until after 7 p.m., buried in quarterly projections. He wasn't working from home to spend more time with me. He was working from home on the specific days I wasn't. Then Chloe began to bloom. The quiet, deferential girl who apologized for taking up space began to occupy it. Her gratitude, which had been constant, was replaced by a strange, unsettling confidence. She started offering opinions I had not asked for. "I was just thinking," she said one afternoon, finding me in the library. "This room feels a little cold. Maybe a dark velvet, like a deep emerald green, would make it cozier. Don't you think, Mr. Hayes?" Marcus, who had just walked in, didn't even look at the fabric swatches I was holding. "That's a fantastic idea. Chloe, brilliant. Eliza, she's right. It's too sterile in here. Let's look at emeralds." He endorsed her idea as if it were a board-level directive. I was the strategist, yet suddenly my nanny was the chief creative officer of my home. Then came the small data points, the ones that make no sense until the final picture emerges. She started to smell expensive, a rich, woody scent. I knew it. It was Le Labo. A $300 bottle of perfume on a nanny's salary. I told myself she bought a cheap imitation. I told myself I was being a snob, a terrible, elitist snob. While Chloe was expanding, Marcus was contracting. He became a critic, his words small, sharp projectiles aimed at my ambition. "You're always on that laptop, Eliza. You seem distant. You're so cold sometimes. We used to be fun. You've forgotten how to be fun. You're not the woman I married." He was right. The woman he married was trusting. The woman he married was not the woman I was becoming. I was becoming a stranger in my own home, an observer, an auditor. His phone, which for a decade had been tossed carelessly on countertops or the nightstand, became a protected object. It was always in his pocket. If he set it down to charge, it was always, screen down. I'd walk into his study, and he would lock the screen with a quick, reflexive jab of his thumb, a gesture that screamed private. He, a man who had never valued privacy, was suddenly building firewalls, but the final, undeniable proof didn't come from his phone. It came from his trash. He had started taking the trash from his own office out, a new, helpful chore. He was sloppy. A single, crumpled piece of paper had fallen under his desk. A receipt. I smoothed it on my knee. It was from Cartier, dated 2 weeks prior. One love necklace, rose gold. It wasn't my birthday. It wasn't our anniversary, and it was certainly not a surprise for the auction. I felt nothing. It was just a fact. 2 days later, I found my proof. I came home early. My meeting canceled. Chloe was in the kitchen, bending over to get a snack for Leo, tucked under the collar of her simple gray t-shirt. I saw it. The glint of rose gold, the unmistakable interlocking circles of the Cartier pendant. I stopped in the doorway. "Chloe," I said, my voice perfectly level, "that's a lovely necklace." She jumped, startled, her hand flying to her throat to cover the pendant. "Oh, Mrs. Hayes, you're home." She forced a bright, panicked smile. "Thank you. It was my grandmother's. It's a family heirloom." A family heirloom. From Cartier's 1970s collection, re-released 3 years ago. I nodded. "It's beautiful." My suspicions were not paranoia. My husband was not just a cheat, he was a cliché. And he was arming my enemy with gifts bought with my money. I didn't get angry. I got to work. I did not confront him. Confrontation is for people with emotional leverage. I was a person with a data deficit. To confront Marcus and Chloe with a suspicion and a necklace would be met with gaslighting and denial. They would call me crazy, jealous, overworked. He would use my accusation as proof of my instability. I knew my husband. He would lie, and he would be convincing. I needed irrefutable, time-stamped, high-definition data. So, I did what I do best. I started a project. 2 nights after I saw the necklace, I found Marcus in the study. "With the gala coming up," I said, looking at my tablet, "and all these high-profile donors, I'm not comfortable with our security blind spots." He looked up, distracted. "Blind spots, Eliza. This house is a fortress. You built it." "I built it, so I know its flaws," I said. "All business. The original cameras have a blind spot on the second-floor hallway, between the master and the guest rooms, and the living room angle is too wide. I'm ordering 2 new micro IP cameras. We need to upgrade before the party." He waved his hand, his eyes already back on his phone. "Whatever you think, honey. You're the expert." "I am," I said. The cameras arrived the next day. They were tiny, easily concealable, and broadcasted in crystal clear 4K. I spent that afternoon, while Leo was at the park with Chloe, installing them myself. The first went into the hallway, nestled in a ventilation grate. It had a perfect, clean view of both his door and hers. The second I hardwired into the smoke detector in the living room, a room where they often sat after I had gone to bed, claiming he was winding down. But hardware is only half the system. The real vulnerability was in the software. I went to the playroom. The Nanny cam, the one aimed at Leo's play area, was a standard high-end consumer model. It recorded, it had audio, and it saved to the Hayes family shared cloud account, an account Marcus had full access to. I logged into the camera's root system. I rerouted its data feed. All recordings would now save exclusively to my private, encrypted server, the one I used for Innovate Solutions. Then, I dug into the audio settings. The default was a voice-activated monitor. I overrode it, enabling the high-sensitivity microphone for continuous, 24/7 recording. The playroom was next to her bedroom. The mic was powerful enough to pick up anything above a whisper. I sat on the floor, surrounded by Leo's wooden blocks, and I felt a wave of guilt so profound it made me sick. It was not the guilt of a wife spying. It was the guilt of a woman who had failed so spectacularly that this violation was her only logical next move. I was betraying my own home. But then I thought of the Cartier receipt. I thought of the emerald green velvet. I thought of my son, asleep in the next room. This was not about saving my marriage. This was about protecting my assets and protecting my child. Most of the money in this house, most of the seed capital for the fund, was mine. It came from my bonuses, my stock options, my work. I was not going to let a cliché and a 23-year-old girl take it from me. That night, I finalized the system. I set custom alerts on my phone, tied only to the 2 new IP cameras. I created a rule: any motion detected in the second-floor hallway feed between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. would trigger a silent push notification to my device. I did not have to wait long. I expected to wait weeks to gather a pattern. It took 2 days. I was in the master bedroom, in bed. Marcus was asleep beside me, his breathing deep and even. At 2:17 a.m., my phone, on my nightstand, vibrated once, a silent notification. I didn't look. I waited until his breathing was a full-on snore. I slipped out of bed, went into my bathroom, and locked the door. I opened the live feed, and I watched. I watched him peek out of our bedroom. I watched him tiptoe. I watched him use his code. Tap, 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 tap. I watched her door open and I watched him slip inside. The confirmation was not satisfying. It was a cold, hollow nausea. But it was in that moment, watching the empty, recorded hallway, that the full, terrible picture emerged. His escalating criticism, his talk of my coldness, his new obsession with my work schedule. It wasn't just a simple, sordid affair. He was building a narrative. He was setting the stage to paint me as the absent, cold, cheating wife. He was going to frame me. He was planning to take everything. The text message from Daniel, his rage at the party. It wasn't jealousy. It was a performance, an act. He wanted a public excuse to divorce me, to ruin my reputation, and to seize control of the fund. He thought he was the predator. He was just a bug in my system, and I now had the documentation to prove it. I was not at home. I was in a sterile, impersonal suite at a hotel near my office, the night before the gala, the night of the video. I need to focus. I had told Marcus earlier that evening, kissing him goodbye at the door. No distractions. I just need to get this speech perfect. I'll see you at the party tomorrow. It was the most comprehensive lie I had ever told him, and it slid off my tongue with terrifying ease. He had bought it completely. Of course, honey, you'll be brilliant. Knock 'em dead. I was not finalizing a speech. My laptop was open on the hotel desk, the screen a stark, cold light in the dark room. I was watching a live feed of my own house. I was watching my system, waiting for the breach I knew was coming. The anxiety was gone, replaced by the grim, patient focus of a scientist waiting for a chemical reaction. At 2:16 a.m., it happened. I didn't need the motion alert. My eyes were already fixed on the second-floor hallway feed. I watched, live. As the master bedroom door opened, I watched as my husband peeked into the hallway. I watched his bare-chested, boxer-clad figure tiptoe across the carpet. I watched him tap the coded knock on Chloe's door. Tap, 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 tap. I watched him slip inside. My hand was already moving. I clicked off the hallway camera. I had that footage. I opened the audio stream for the playroom cam. The high-sensitivity microphone was a thing of beauty. It cut through the thin wall, picking up their voices as if they were in the room with me. At first, just murmurs, the sound of kissing. Then, Chloe's voice, no longer the timid girl, but sharp, anxious. Are you absolutely sure, Marcus, tomorrow? At the party, it feels risky. And then his voice, my husband's voice. Not the charming public speaker, but a low, cold, confident plotter. It's the only way, I'm telling you, he said. Tomorrow. I'll handle her. I'll make her look stupid in front of everyone. Her investors, our partners. Everyone. She'll be so humiliated, so broken, she won't know what hit her. He paused, and I heard the sound of a glass clinking. I'll use that text message from her colleague as the trigger. I'll paint her as the cheater. By the time I'm done, this fund, this whole operation, it will be ours. They'll hand it to the grieving husband, not the unfaithful wife. There was a silence. Then, Chloe laughed. It was not a pretty sound. It was greedy and triumphant. I can't wait, she said, her voice dripping with venomous anticipation. To be the new mistress of this house. I sat in the dark. The city lights of Boston blurred through the hotel window. The pain I had anticipated, the explosive grief of a betrayed wife, never arrived. There was no hot, searing agony. There was only a profound Arctic cold. I did not cry. Crying was an indulgence I could not afford. Crying was an emotional response, and this had just become a logistical problem. My hands, perfectly steady, moved across the laptop. I stopped the recording. I clicked download. I watched the progress bar for second floor hallway, do 2:16 a.m. and playroom audio, zo 2:19 a.m. When they were secure on my hard drive, I began my backup protocol. Backup 1, a military-grade encrypted USB, the one I would use at the gala. Backup 2, my private, firewalled cloud server, completely detached from any family accounts, accessible only by a 48-character randomized password. Backup 3, I opened a new email. I attached both files. I sent it to my top corporate lawyer, the most ruthless man I knew. The subject line was contingency. The body of the email was simple. Do not open these files. Do not acknowledge this email. Just hold it. You will know if you need it. I closed the laptop. It was all clear now. The criticism, the gaslighting, his feigned jealousy over a harmless text. It was a planned-out, systematic campaign to discredit me. He was going to publicly execute me to steal my work. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the sleeping city. He thought he was setting a trap for me. He had no idea he was standing in the middle of one I had built. I knew exactly what I had to do. I would go to the gala, I would give my speech, and I would let him. I would let him walk right up onto that stage, full of confidence, and I would let him start the fire. He had forgotten who he was married to. I wasn't just a strategist. I was a systems architect, and he was about to learn what happens when you try to introduce a virus into my network. The room was no longer silent. It was a cacophony. The explosion had hit, and now the shockwave was tearing the salon apart. I saw David, his face purple, cornering Marcus against the stage, his finger jabbing at Marcus's chest. Marcus was holding his hands up, trying to placate him. "David, I can fix this. I can explain." But David just shook his head, his expression one of utter disgust and betrayal. Guests were flooding toward the exit, not in a panic, but in a hurried, repulsed tide. They were clustered in small groups, whispering furiously. I saw their phones, held up not to record, but already lit, texting, tweeting, spreading the fire. The scandal was already out of the room. It was on the internet. The Marcus and Eliza Future Fund was toxic, dead on arrival. Then, he saw me. He broke away from David, his desperation giving him a final, pathetic burst of energy. He ran to the podium, his face a grotesque mask of pleading. "Eliza," he whispered, his voice cracking, grabbing the edge of the lectern. "Eliza, please, baby, let's just go upstairs. We can talk. This is a horrible misunderstanding. We can fix this, just you and me, privately." He reached for my hand. I pulled my hand back, not in anger, but with the dispassionate movement of retracting it from something unclean. I leaned forward and turned the microphone back on. The sharp click and subsequent electronic hum silenced the remaining chaos. The exiting guests paused, turning back for the finale. My voice was not loud. It was not emotional. It was a statement of fact, amplified to fill every corner of my home. The launch of the Marcus and Eliza Future Fund is over. I looked past the crowd, past the destruction, and locked my eyes on the man who had been my husband. "And the Marcus and Eliza Future Fund," I continued, my voice perfectly level, "is over, as is our marriage." He flinched, as if I had struck him. "Eliza, no, you don't mean that." "All donations collected tonight will be refunded in full by morning," I stated, ignoring him. "A full independent audit of all foundation and family finances will begin tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I turned my gaze, just slightly, to find David in the crowd. He was watching me, his face pale but his eyes sharp, calculating. "My lawyer will be in contact with you, Marcus," I said, turning back to my husband. "And David." David stood straighter. "I suggest you have your lawyer call mine as well. You need to know what, exactly, you've been partners with." I looked down at the microphone, the instrument of my defense. I had no more to say. The data had been presented. The conclusion was self-evident. My hand released the microphone. I placed it, gently, back on the podium. I did not look at Marcus again. I turned and stepped down from the platform. I walked toward the main entrance, my steps unhurried. The crowd, which had been a sea of judgment just minutes before, parted for me. It was like the Red Sea, a path clearing through the whispers and the shocked faces. I walked through my home, past the shattered champagne flutes, past the wreckage of my old life. I reached the massive front door, pulled it open, and stepped out into the cool, clear Boston night. I did not look back. I left him there, alone on the stage, a pathetic king of a ruined kingdom, illuminated by the cold, empty glow of the screen he thought would be his victory. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to know where you are all listening from, so please share your thoughts and where you are in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.